Seeking the chance of adventure and to make a name for himself, Robin Shaw responds to an advert. Crew wanted. There will be danger, darkness, possibly no return. But glory. Now that is intoxicating. Could this be the opportunity he was waiting for to finally make a name for himself outside of the Navy? Recruited by the kind-hearted Captain Hunt, Shaw is told the expedition is to locate a missing vessel, the Viscount, lost amongst the ice somewhere in the South Pole. Hunt's mission is to find the ship, the crew, and to retrieve what research they had. The first few weeks sailing was smooth, almost peaceful, the churn of the sea around the hull of the vessel as the Temperance slid through the ocean with ease. Soon the ocean gave way to snow and ice, the breath almost freezing in the lungs of the sailors. Progress began to slow as the ship finally ground to a halt. Shaw knew this is where their expedition truly began. Yet for all of Shaw's best intentions, nothing prepared him for the disappearance of the captain. Seemingly distressed that the crew were on a one-way course to death, Hunt abandoned the ship with several crew, leaving Shaw at the captain's post. No sooner had Shaw taken the reins than Engineer Hammond, panic and fear written on his grease-blackened face, informed Shaw that all hands are needed as the furnace is about to blow. With the furnace repaired, a mistrusting crew awaited Shaw. Loyalties were tested, allegiances formed, as Shaw survived a ship's vote. It was clear that the Stokes brothers still felt Hunt was their captain. With the Temperance now taking in water, the decision was made to relocate onto the ice. Hopes were still high, yet that dark feeling was beginning to grow in the pit of Shaw's stomach. Those hopes began to melt away like ice in the hand, as the Temperance became lost to the ice once and for all. In the midst of splintering wood and crumpling metal, the ship crushed under the weight of the ice pack, relentlessly shifting. The crew, no longer seeking fortune and glory, lost in this wilderness, knowing this was now a voyage of survival. With their new camp set up, the crew tried to carry on regardless. The loss of the Temperance shook most of them to the core. The stark realisation that the winter fast approaching, survival and awaiting rescue was going to be a monumental task. The crew needed assurances. They wanted things to take their minds off of their current circumstances. While Shaw was acutely aware that these men and women couldn't be pushed to their breaking point, but with food slowly running out and fuel the difference between them staying alive and an icy coffin, he knew that certain crew requests had to be denied if they were to keep going. Malnourishment and frostbite were becoming their worst enemies. The vicious circle of rationing food that led to malnourishment, that led to even more hunting missions across the ice to alleviate the malnourishment, leading to crew members having to deal with frostbite. The constant cycle each and every day, almost all dissolving into a single extended -30-degree unending day of toil. Shaw tried to push on, carrying out his duties as captain, taking requests from the crew members, assisting where he could, trying to keep up appearances of control, like a swan. To all in front of him, pressure was nothing. He was strong-willed, forthright. Yet inside him, he could feel the panic like a squall, his heart hammering, a nervous wreck. Working with the crew didn't help matters. The stress on Shaw and the doctor reached breaking point. After repeated expeditions, Mr. Zack, one of Templeton's team, pleaded to be allowed to rest. He was struggling to keep up with the constant work on the ice packs. "I'm so cold, Captain. I can't feel my toes. My bones ache. I'm tired. Please let me rest." Shaw had no choice but to deny Mr. Zack's pleas. With the other science team members already being attended to by the doctor, there needed to be someone to go out on that ice. As the end of the week approached, this proved to be a fatal decision that Shaw was going to have to live with. Mr. Zack withdrew from the rest of the crew as the week went on. He started to refuse food, citing he wanted to ensure other crew members had enough to eat. Yet it was evident he was struggling to move. Every step for him was excruciating. He could no longer feel his fingers. The cold was burning pain. The ice was a silent killer. Mr. Zack was found in his tent, on his knees, head rested on his camp bed. According to the doctor, it appeared Mr. Zack passed away whilst trying to make his way to his bed to stay warm. His heart had stopped before he could make it. The ice doesn't care about grief and loss. It is ever moving, always shifting. It has no interest in the feelings of man or beast. This is why 10 weeks into the expedition, Kurt and Templeton made Shaw aware that the ice pack was moving, causing the ground they had camped upon to become unsafe. There was nothing else for it other than to relocate, moving in the direction of the last known coordinates of the Viscount, and hopefully more stable ground. 11 weeks into the expedition, and the crew of the Temperance packed up and prepared to move, leaving behind the memory of the ship they lost and their crew members. The journey was arduous and slow. The snow was getting deeper and deeper, and it was proving increasingly difficult for everyone to find their footing. Crew morale was at its lowest, the rumblings from the crew creating more and more unease between Shaw and the Stokes brothers, particularly Grimley. In an effort to find their way out of the deep, deep snow, Shaw scouts ahead of the group with one of Kurt's team, Quisley. An expert tracker, Quisley set out straight away in finding the best route possible. Step by step, inch by inch, Shaw and Quisley edged forward, making sure any route was possible, not only for the crew, but also for the fully loaded lifeboats. A sound comes up from up ahead, a cracking sound, like the thinner ice ahead was weakening. Suddenly, with an eruption of ice and water, a tiger seal launches from beneath the ice. Clearly starving, it eyes Quisley as a potential meal, and with surprising speed moves towards the petrified scout. Shaw reaches for his rifle, lifts the weapon to take aim, panic and cold making his arms feel like jelly, shaking. There's a loud crack as the rifle fires. The bullet slices through the front flank of the seal, but it's still coming. It's got the scent now, the taste for flesh. With the sound of the rifle ringing in his ears, mixing with the heavy thump of his heart, Shaw reloads the rifle. The seal now meters away from Quisley. Time is running out. Shaw raises the gun, breathes out, and pulls the trigger one final time. A fresh new week in camp, despite Quisley escaping the clutches of the tiger seal thanks to the quick trigger finger of Shaw, and thanks to his actions, fresh seal was back on the menu. Crew morale was crumbling again. The time now spent on the ice was affecting every crew member. Despite Shaw's best efforts, dissension was bubbling up from every corner. Rumours arose through Templeton that Grimley was now singing songs ridiculing Shaw's captaincy, belittling his every decision. The crew were now listening to these songs. The last thing this expedition needed was a mutiny. Shaw knew that he was going to have to challenge Grimley concerning these songs, and somehow bring him round to his way of thinking. Listening to the words spilling from Grimley's mouth during the song, Shaw felt a guttural rage welling up inside him, making his throat tighten. The crew began to join in on the act, singing along with Grimley as he smiled towards Shaw. Grimley knew what he was doing by singing this song. Confronting Shaw meant a challenge to his captaincy, and in front of the crew sowed the seeds that Shaw was weak and wouldn't stand up to this subordination.
Never tells which way is south, hardly tells their arse from mouth. They never had a notion for taking our command. Send us to the hells for biscuits, we eat out of their hands. We eat out of their hands. Captain Hunt could take a ship further than his fingertip. Captain Shaw can't move a pace. What a waste of hauling space. They never had a notion for taking our command. Send us to the hells for biscuits, we eat out of their hands. We eat out of their hands.
Enough was enough. Shaw was drawing a line in the sand here and now. Reaching towards Grimley in fury, he grasped the accordion in Grimley's hands, yanked it away with all of his strength, threw it to the ground, releasing a puff of snow into the air. With a sly grin, looking straight into Grimley's shocked eyes, Shaw raised a foot, hovered over the accordion for a second, just long enough for the crew to adjust to what was transpiring. Then with a swift downward motion, the accordion exploded underfoot. Following the incident with Grimley, the crew remained sombre for the following weeks. Surprisingly, crew morale had improved. Was it because they had formed a kind of respect for Shaw, through admiration or fear? Grimley had been keeping his distance, and the focus had turned to the weather. Food and fuel were running out fast. Even despite the haul from the recent tiger seal, it became clear that rationing had to become key to their survival. Once again, however, the cycle of illness began again, men and women growing weaker and weaker by the day, food becoming scarce, people's malnourishment increasing, people's bones freezing, people screaming in pain at night because of the frostbite, not knowing when it will change for them. Shaw was beginning to wonder whether or not he could actually lead this crew to safety and to rescue. If only they could foresee that the worst was yet to come.